your feet. It's the Rebel Hearted Radio Show, the perfect place to set rules, obligations, and expectations aside when you tune in and reconnect with your wild side. Meet your host, intuitive badass, healer, and coach, the original Rebel Hearted woman, Lisa Friedt. Turn imperfect action into traction and step fully into the power of who you are meant to be. Now here she is, the badass healer herself, Lisa!
Hey everyone, welcome to the Rebel Hearted Radio Show. I am so excited to be here on this Groundhog Day. We have an amazing guest today. We have Petra Monaco. If you have seen her online, she is all over the place. She is the captain of visibility. And I just am so excited for our show. The theme is Dream, Believe, Take Action. Welcome, Petra.
Hi, thanks.
How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm awesome.
Of course you are.
No other question.
So today, what I was really hoping that you would do for us is that you have such an inspirational story, and I know that you share it all over the place, but would you be willing to share it with our listeners today? Just tell us a little bit about you and what brought you to this moment.
Sure, absolutely. So I grew up in foster care since I was 2. And for the longest time, struggled with accepting that part and self-hatred and destruction. Tried to find my way of who I was. And only in the last few years, specifically the last year, decided that I'm not a foster kid reject, but I'm a foster kid success because I'm here. But it's been not an easy road because there was always something, kind of getting in my way of getting to that next level, just another challenge, just another something. When I was 18, I stepped on an airplane from Germany to the United States and never looked back. And got married twice to the same guy. Talk about toxic relationship challenges and poor boundaries and not knowing who I was. But I always felt that, I can have whatever I want to do, even though people told me, no, you can't have the cake. I need it too. And I'm like, yes, I can. And so I put myself through college, earned a couple of degrees, one in accounting, one in mental health, and it's 2 different sides of the world. And in 2007, my son was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder that really just drove into it's now or never. Go off the woods, you want, make it happen kind of thing. But it wasn't quite as easy because he required a couple liver transplants. And it was really, really hard for a while to just come out of that. But even during that time, I never wavered that he wouldn't come out of it. Like I had that belief that he would walk out of that hospital and be alive and well. And after I started working for being a counselor, I decided that coaching is more my thing because I just needed to be me. And I can't do that in a world where there's too much red tape and this is how you need to act kind of thing. I just wanted to be who I am, share my story, and help other women just go after what it is that they want.
Yeah. Every time I listen to your story, and I've had the privilege of hearing it a few times, every time I listen, I'm always like, wow, just frickin' wow. How you go from this place of self-hatred and this belief of foster kid reject into foster kid success story with a couple of degrees and dealing with, a child with physical or with health needs and just all of it. I'm like, what? Like, why is this not a movie yet? So
one day maybe.
Right? Oh, okay. Well, here's a fun question. Who would play you? Who would be Petra?
Jodie Foster.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. Okay.
it's like, don't you know?
This is so fantastic. Okay, so I want to backtrack a little bit, and you talk about going from foster kid reject to foster kid success story and making that switch in your mind, which would have to be a big switch. We're not talking about like going from jeans to yoga pants. We're talking a very big switch. Can you tell us a little bit about what was happening right then in your life that helped you to make that switch, that transformation?
Well, it really, I was tired living in the shadow of my parents' story, right? And we have to create our own world and our own stories. And every time I told the story of that I'm a foster kid, I remembered my parents and all the negativity around it. Until one day I said, I don't want to live in that dysfunction. I don't want to live in their shadow. I want to shine my own light the only way I know how to do it. And it wasn't a slow progression. It literally took 10 years to get from reject to success. It was continuous mindset work, continuous looking at the ways that I was, the patterns repeated and how I was showing up and what was coming up into my life in terms of relationships and jobs. It just continues analyzing how that all stemmed from being a foster kid and how that was showing up today and what I can do to change. And then make a decision to change it. And so I started rewriting the story.
Awesome. So when you were making the mindset switch and doing that work, did you know like that there were coaches that you could hire to help with that or anything like that?
No.
Cool.
When I first started this, it was like 10 years ago, thereabouts, and I had no idea that life coaching is like a thing.
So what resources really helped you?
Psychology 101. I love psychology. It's why I became a mental health counselor. It's why I studied the field. But in cognitive behavioral therapy is sort of my strong suit. You know, what we believe, we think, and all that kind of stuff. I just started to analyze myself like a therapist would.
Fabulous. So would you, like, were there times where you're like, I am crazy for wanting to do this. It would be easier just to go back to the way that it was before?
I don't think that's in my genes. Certainly there were days I was like, why am I doing all of this work and why am I going for this next degree or this better job, that kind of a thing, but not when it comes to my personal stuff. I always know there's more and there's potential, and I always see the potential. I'm a big vision girl. I see the bigger picture at the end versus the details. Mm-hmm. And so I just see that bigger picture of myself and how I want to have my life be and reflect. So I never decided to quit ever. Like that never even came into my system. I may have struggled until I got to where I go, but I never was like, no, I'm not doing this.
I love that. I love that. So if somebody were just getting started, if they were like looking to make a big shift, and it didn't have to be the same as like what you went through, right? Like foster kid reject to foster kid success story, right? Because, you know, let's face it, not everyone has that as the obstacle or as the shift that they're looking to make. But if they didn't even know about coaching being a resource, so let's just take that off the table for a second, even though we know how powerful that is, right?
Right.
What would you give them as like, this could be your first step?
Read books. There's a gazillion, and I mean gazillion, self-help books. But first, I think you have to figure out what it is you want to change, because you won't be able to know what to look for until you figure it out. This part is what I want to improve. And it doesn't have to start with you. It can start with your career or whatever. It can start with something else before you realize that it's actually more about you as a person. And then the information will really just come to you.
Yeah, because there's going to be people that are like, you think I'm the problem? Hell no, it's my shitty ass job. That's the problem, you know?
Right. Well, and in this, in this in the self-help world, and I find this to be true, even for myself, for me, it was I needed to be a CPA and I needed to get this degree in order to have the money to provide for my kids. That's how my journey really kind of just started. It wasn't that I was struggling with alcohol. It was the fact that I wanted a better job. And that's sometimes how our personal journeys get started, is by we want to improve something. You need to figure out what that something is. And then your mind will bring stuff to you, the universe, whatever, information will pop up and you're like, okay, I'm going to check this out. And then before you know it, you're a different person.
Was there a book that you were like, this was something that opened my mind and made me willing to think a little bit different, or being willing to look at things a little bit differently? Was there a specific book?
There wasn't a book, but there was a TV show.
Which one was it?
The air, but it's starting over.
Oh my gosh, me too!
and I would watch that show every single day and just absorb transforming that show. And I'm like, and that's where I learned first about life coaching. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. But I wasn't in the mindset that I could do something like that. But I learned from that show and, sort of started just looking into how I wanted to behave and act.
Yeah, that show, when I look at it, and I'm just like, wow. And it's funny because I remember watching it the first time it came around, which, by the way, it's still, like, you can still catch reruns. The other day, there was a rerun of it. And I was like, oh, I wonder who's
nice.
Who was in the house. So for those of you guys that don't know what the heck we're talking about, there was a show that was on, and I wish I could even remember the coaches. Like, Ianla was on the show at one point.
Rhonda Britton
and
was
Rhonda.
The other one, I think.
Yeah, and then there was a third coach. I know that there was some switching around, but and it talked about there'd be 5 women in the house that would come in and go through this journey of starting over, whether it be weight or divorce or bankruptcy, whatever the reason, that was going on in their life, and they would progress through the house with these 2 life coaches and these challenges of giving up certain things, and it was just, awesome. I think you're the only other person I know that has watched it. I'm sure other people have, but you're the first person that I've ever heard mention it. So awesome. For me, it was a book that got me to think any way differently and start like a really blown out journey for myself. And it was Ask and It Is Given by Jerry and Esther Hicks. And I was like, no, this has to be bullshit. But what if it isn't bullshit? And then what if I'm doing this and nothing works, And then I'm like, well, is it really that bad? Like, is that the worst that could happen? Because shit's not that great right now,
Right. No, I get it. And it's so interesting because up until that show, because I love psychology, I was reading Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung books like you wouldn't believe. Like, I have a library of their stuff just because I love psychology and I love to know how the mind works, why people like me or you do the things that we do, why, and this is going to sound weird, serial killers do what they do. Like, I have a database because I was so enthralled with the whole psychology of it. And to just really understand the brain and the mind and how that all interacts. And that's how I became a therapist eventually.
Yeah. So what was it like? Because let's touch on that a little bit. You said you were 18, you moved from Germany to the States. You never looked back.
Nope.
And
no,
did you speak English?
I didn't. I spoke with my hand and feet in a dictionary. It was, but I watched a lot of television because I wasn't able to work when I first moved here. And so soap operas became like my thing. And so I learned the language through TV, but then also when my son was in kindergarten, I literally studied with him to learn the language.
That's beautiful. Like, and how challenging was that?
Um, it's making me think back a long time, but not that I'm that old. um, it was a little bit challenging because I found myself coming up on hurdles. People didn't know how to pronounce my name, and people thought I was from New York when I really wasn't, or from some other region I had no idea about that existed. And so it was just a learning process, and it just became easier and easier and easier.
You know, it's funny that you bring up like not knowing how to pronounce your name because when people look at it, they instantly think like Petra, right?
Uh-huh. Absolutely.
And
Yep.
I remember when we first even started talking back in September or October or whenever that was, or August, whatever. Anyway.
Whenever.
And I would be like, man, I'm afraid to say your name because I'm going to say it wrong. And one of the biggest pet peeves that I have is when people pronounce my name wrong. And like, my name's Lisa Friedt. The Friedt, I'm not that married to. Well, okay, I'm literally married to a Friedt, which is why I have that last name. But my maiden name was McKinney. And people would call me McKinnon and McKinley. And I was like, fuck, it's not that hard.
Yep.
Like, look, sound out the letters. And with you, I was like, this could go either way. Maybe I'll just get her to say her name again. And then I would be like, yep, it's Petra. And then I would run into somebody that also knew you, and they would call you Petra, and I'd be like, am I wrong? Have I been calling her name wrong? And she hasn't corrected me. Like,
Yeah, I have this thing, like, I respond to both. In Germany, it's Petra. Like, the R is really rolled, and it's, very short. And I never loved my name when I was growing up. I hated it. So when I moved to the States, I was like, Petra, that sounds so much nicer and less harsh than a German language does. And I really like it, and I stuck with it, and I kind of changed that. But it doesn't bother me either way. I respond to both.
well, excellent.
That's the name.
So we were talking, like, I know that we were just talking about books a minute ago, and I wandered around there, but we called this, like, the theme of the show, Dream, Believe, Take Action. And just before the call, you were like, yeah, because that's the name of one of my books. Want to tell us about it?
Yeah. So as you remember, when we were working together back in November, I said, hey, I'm writing a book.
Yeah.
This kind of came to me. I want to write this book. It's called Dream, Believe, Take Action. And it's really about giving yourself permission to dream and allowing all those possibilities to come into your life. But then also dealing with the fear and the mindset of like, oh, I'm not good enough, and I can't, what people say. But then just also take action. But the belief part comes in when we work through our fear that we really believe in ourselves. And we have to believe in our dreams, or we might as well just hang it up. So Dream, Believe, Take Action, it's really to walk you through, yes, you have permission to dream it. Yes, you have permission to believe in yourself and in your dream. And now, please do take action without further ado. To where there is a small action plan and some journaling parts at the end of the book that will help you get closer to where you want to be.
I love it. So what would you say, like, if we're talking about like dream, believe, take action, giving yourself permission to dream, what's something that you could tell our listeners, okay, this would be the first step to giving yourself permission to dream? What would that be?
Stop listening to the other people in your world. I think that's why it took me so long to get to where I was. It's because I was listening to other people and felt the judgments and the criticism, like, oh, no, you can't do that. Or, only rich people do that. Or only these kind of people do that. And who are you to do that? When I really stopped listening to that and said, you know what? I can have the cake and eat it too. I'm totally going to make that happen. It's really claiming your own power and to stop the noise that's going to stop you.
Yeah. So when we're like, okay, stop listening to other people. What about when it comes to, you're an entrepreneur, you're online, you see it all over the place where people are like, I just had my $10,000 minute. Well, maybe not minute,
Barf.
but, And you see this very shiny side projected all over the place. And very few people are actually saying, like, hold up, like, bullshit. That, what's your advice for people that are like, okay, so I stopped listening to my mom and my dad and my spouse and my kid and my best friend, but when I go to put myself out here and even dream, this is what I'm seeing. What advice do you have for those people that are like, they're barfing in the handbag?
Yeah, I totally barf at that. Just do it your way. The thing is, there's no wrong or right way to do whatever it is that you want to do. You coach very differently than I do. I coach my way. I post out differently than you do. I post quite differently than most people. I never talk about money because that's my money. I don't have to talk about it with you. But that's a choice that I make. And you just have to do it your way. There's no wrong or right way to have your dreams. Your dream can be being an entrepreneur. It can mean something totally different. You just have to figure out what that is, right? And then just do it your way. Because really, there isn't any other way to do it. You might be able to copy some sales system and some of this and some of that, but when it comes to your message and your business or your career or family, there's really just your way of doing it.
Yeah. I started on the great big, back in August, I was like, fuck the sales funnel. You don't need the sales funnel. You don't need the opt-in. You don't need this. You don't need that. You don't have to fill out another ideal client avatar worksheet ever again, And
Absolutely.
then I talked about this and putting that out there. And then I started building my own things. And people are like, but you have a place to sign up. You have you collect email addresses and whatnot. That's a funnel. And I'm like, yes, but I couldn't start there. I could not start with a funnel building somebody else's strategy because it wasn't authentic to me. It wasn't working for me. And I started collecting email addresses because people were like, I want you to send me stuff. And I had to find a way to do that.
Right. Well, and everybody's journey is different. And I think we all get hung up. We have to have all these different things in place before we can do it. And I know you talk about an imperfect action all the time, and you don't have to wait another second to get going. Start now. Wherever you are, just start now.
Yeah.
And I think people just get kind of hung up on it that they have to have all these different things in place. And I know I don't have a sales funnel. I have something where you can sign up for a newsletter, but as far as promoting and launching and all that other crap, I don't, because it's not what calls me. It's not feeling good to me. I create a course and I put it out. I write a book and I put it out. That's how I roll. You just got to find your own way of doing it.
Yeah. And that's how I launch. Hey, I just had this brilliant idea 32 seconds ago. The reason why I waited 32 seconds is because I had to type it down. Want to play with me? Let's do it. So I think that was part of what connected our hearts to each other, where we were like, oh yeah, I hear you. Your bat signal is very similar to mine that way.
Well, yes, it is. Well, and I think just when you're starting out, especially if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you get so bogged down about having all these different things and how to write a perfect Facebook post. Screw that mess. Yes, you can plan. Yes, you can figure out what you're going to say. But I like to post impromptu with whatever comes to my mind, because that's how I like to do things. When it inspires me to share, I share. If it doesn't inspire me, I'm not going to share it. Even if somebody else needs to hear it, I tend to share what feels good to me.
Absolutely. And I do the same thing. When I make my videos, I'm making my videos because they're either a conversation that I've had 3 times before already that day that I'm like, I'm just going to make a video. It'll shorten things up a little bit. Or this is where I'm at in this moment, as by my Facebook post in Rebel Hearted Women yesterday in the bathtub with beer. You got to be real with where you are at. So now we've talked about the taking action, and we've talked about giving yourself permission to dream. But what about permission to believe in yourself?
Yeah, so that can get tricky, because I think we know we get our messages from childhood, right? From the time we were born, we get all these different messages thrown at us. of how we should be and how we should be in society and the kind of job we should have, blah, 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 blah. And we forget that when we were little, we were the most confident people on earth. We didn't question about walking. We didn't question the crawling or the jumping off the couch or climbing that tree. We didn't question it. We just did it because we were confident to do it. So I've been inviting my readers to really just remember their childhood or the moments that they felt really confident, and just to bring that memory back and feel it. Because when we can remember moments that we were confident, then we know we've been confident in the next thing.
Yeah. Yes.
And when we have that confidence, the belief just kind of follows. You know, I talked to somebody the other day. They're kind of floundering around, and I'm like, do you have a success list? And they're like, what is that? And it's all the things you achieved with confidence.
And so for a success list, because I think that's a great tool. It's a great tool. But somebody's there like, what? How long does it have to be? Where should they start with? Like, if you were going to say, brand new client, just starting this transformational work, the deep work that you do, Petra, how long would you say, like, what would be their target? You know, because if you give it, it's too short, there's not much energy behind it. And if it's too long, it's too daunting. So what's the number? What's your magic number with it?
It's 3 to 5 every day for 30 days. But this, again, I like my clients to do whatever feels good for them too. But 3 to 5 every day. And I do this on a weekly basis for myself. I write down, like, this radio is going to go on my everything's going well list. But to also remember back that you graduate high school. It's not just what you're doing well now. It's remembering all those times you were successful before. You know, graduating high school, I think, sometimes get dismissed. The parents celebrate because the kids are getting ready to move out, but we're like, oh yeah, we graduated high school, yay. But then forget about that part, because high school isn't exactly easy.
Dude, I think surviving junior fucking high deserves like a big award ceremony and a celebration, you know, every 10 years or so.
Yeah, just write that down. You know what? I graduated high school. It's a success thing. I got a job interview and it went really great. That's a success. If you landed a job, there you go. You have something else. You earned a degree, put that on there. You wrote a book, put it on there. You started a business, put that on there. Anything that ever made you feel successful needs to be on that list. And you can make an ongoing list, something that you just add to every day. Or you can do a weekly list, which is what I like to do. Or you can do a daily list.
Awesome. And you figured, like, after 30 days of doing this, what will people recognize? Like, what are some of the benefits after 30 days?
Look at all the badass stuff I just got done.
Yeah.
You just see the results of all the work you've been putting out there. You see the results that, wow, I did all those things. There's no reason I can't be confident. If I did all of these things, everything else is bullshit that I'm telling myself. One of the things I always say, I kept my kid alive. That's one of my success stories. It's not one that I necessarily write about, but because I believed in him and we were successful in him coming home, that's success I celebrate. It can be however little and big, but you'll see all the negative stuff you've been telling about. It's really just bullshit. And therefore, you'll be more confident.
I like it. One of the things I always say, and I got it from reading a book, and don't ask me whose book it was, because it's, you know, one of the hundreds or whatever, you know. But actions of confidence come way before feelings of confidence. You know, yep. You don't wait until you wake up one day and you're like, yep, I feel confident enough to get started today. You start today taking action. And then
confidence happens by doing. But by just remembering some of the past things that you were, you know, successful and confident in, that just helps you remember that feeling and bring that into today.
Yeah, I love it. And one of the things that you meant, like, hey, like, if you write a book, write that down. So I want to write a book, and I've got all kinds of stories about why it is that I can't. However, now I do have my book. My book is going to release this year. But for you, how many books have you written?
3 altogether.
Awesome.
Working on a number 4 now. It's marinating in my brain, as I like to call it.
I love it. I love it. So how did it feel when you were like, I'm going to write a book? And then boom, next thing you know, you wrote the damn book.
Yeah, this last one, Dream Believe Take Action, was so interesting in how that came together, because I actually hadn't thought about writing another book after I published the previous one. But I was just taking a drive to one of my side gigs that I'm doing, and I was like, I'm going to write a book that's called Dream, Believe, Take Action. And literally for 2 weeks, I just sat down and wrote every day. But I also already had the content ready in part. So it was really easy just to pull everything together, let it marinate again for another month, because sometimes I need time to process before I can go back in it, edit it, said, it's ready. This is about as perfect as it's going to get, because I don't worry about grammar and punctuation quite as much as maybe I should. And I just went ahead and published it.
I love that. It's so, like, the fact that you can be like, you know, and what I thought was important that you said there was like, I made the decision that, you know what, I'm going to write a book. And then next thing you know, boom, book written. Thank you. Check, check. You know, and you didn't sit there and wait and stew and wonder what it was going to look like and, you know, spend that energy spinning off sideways.
Yeah, I don't actually do I'm a bad planner. I mean, I have got ideas of what I want to do, and I have my visualization for the year all done, blah, 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 but I don't necessarily plan like projects or anything. And so it's really I just get inspired to do something and it happens. I'm like, I want to do this. All right, let's do it. And it just kind of gets done. It's just who I am as a person. Like, I want to go to college. All right, let's sign up and I'm in college. It's just how that goes for me. It doesn't work for everybody. Not everybody's like that, but that's who I am.
There are people who got hives just when you said that, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
A couple of weeks ago, I had Kimberly Lynn. It's okay. Go ahead. It's taken you.
It's taken me a couple years to realize that everybody is not quite as fast paced as me, and I need to slow down for them. Like, I'm already 10 steps ahead when I start talking to them, and they're like, "No, wait a minute, I'm not there yet." Which can be sometimes challenging, but I'm learning quite well to just meet them where they are.
Yeah. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to Kimberly Lynn Pollard, and she is a planner. Like, do you know Kimberly?
I think so.
Yeah. She is a planner. Like, to the T. She can strategize, and she just fascinates me. And then she'll be like, so what's your plan? And I get hives. I'm like, I don't have plans. I'm going to wake up, maybe eat some breakfast, drink a cup of coffee, and just do what, like, boom, wha-bam, comes into my mind that day that I'm gonna work on. And this year, when I was looking at, like, what would really stretch me this year? Like, really stretch me. And I thought, you know what would stretch me is if I planned a little more. And makes me uncomfortable to even say it out loud.
I get that. I have a huge whiteboard in my office. I call it my other brain. Because all my thoughts and ideas and projects that I may want to do this year are on it, and I see them every day. And so that's probably the most planning I do is a bunch of bubbles on my other brain. And I look at them and go, all right, where am I with that today? Because at some point it may not be aligned with me anymore. You know, I may not want to write another e-course for the rest of the year. I don't know that. So, but they're there.
Well, so it's funny that you say that, because I look up from where I'm doing this interview, and I have a list. It's written on the wall. Well, it's on a piece of paper on the wall, because I don't know if I'm brave enough to use a Sharpie to write on my wall. That can be really distracting at the end of the year. And it says, it's my woohoo, woo-woo, get-to-do list, you know? And Currently it has 9 things on it, one of which I've already been like, I wrote it down, I launched it, and I was like, yeah, I'm so over that. Crossed out. But I had to keep a list, because I'm like, I get so many ideas and so many things that are happening. The flow happens that if I don't pluck them out of the air, they're just gone. And they've moved on to somebody else. But I wouldn't mind the chance to be able to revisit them occasionally, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I make notes of all of my ideas that are coming in, and some that are really strong go on my whiteboard and hang out in a bubble mind map kind of theme. Others just end up in journals and stay there. And periodically I look through those journals, kind of check in with myself to see if that's still something, or if it's just, not right now. And I just do whatever.
So you have journals and a whiteboard. I have, I have a few whiteboards and a flip chart, but I also have a filing cabinet that's filled with like notepads that are filled with like, I could go back to my first year of business, the first sketches of it. And yeah, sometimes it's fun just pour a glass of wine, sit back and look at them and be like, oh fuck, I knew nothing then. Like nothing. And if you tried to tell me what I knew now, I wouldn't believe you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I journal out of, for my mindset every day, and just going back and looking where I was a year ago or 2 years ago, even as a person, not necessarily in business. That goes on the success list, by the way, because there's some huge growth and, stuff that happened. Like a year ago, I would have never envisioned to be published on the Huffington Post. Like I would have never dreamt of that. And here, just a couple months ago, it was like, woohoo, I've done it. So next year I get to look back on that going, yeah, go me.
Do you find that like with Facebook, it has, on this day, do you ever read back and look at that and be like, oh, I'm so not there anymore. Woohoo!
Oh, that just happened to me this past week. So funny that I bring that up. Just 3 years ago, I was still sort of in, not a negative mindset, but definitely not able to pull myself out enough to see it. Always complaining about this, that, and the other, but never in detail, always vague about what was happening. And to where I'm like, I don't even post anything like that anymore at all on my Facebook.
So the reason why I bring it up is because, was it today? Oh my God, it might have been today. I have to do math. 8 years ago. Holy shit. And I'm like reading it and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I posted that for the Facebook world to see. Like, what the WTF was I thinking right there? And like, how did I have any friends? If that's where my head was at.
Yeah, I totally get that. Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. So I can't help. It's funny. I read them every day and I'm like, I'm so grateful I'm not there. I'm so grateful that I've been able to journey beyond that point. And I will likely be back there again, like, because I mean, I'm human. Where I revisit, we peel that layer off the onion and we're like, oh, look it. Here we go. This lesson again. Woohoo.
Yeah. Right. Or it's a different lesson and you're still like, oh, wow, look how far I've come. Because I don't think we ever look at how far we've come. And I think when I made that switch from reject to success and taking action and doing all these things that I'm doing, it's just like 20 years ago, I would have never thought about that I'm an author, let alone a business owner in a country that I didn't even know anything about. Other than that it existed.
And in a language that you did not know how to speak.
Right, exactly, because I failed English in high school miserably. But to just review that and go through this progression and see how far I've come, and it's been amazing. I used to be very looking for validation through other people. That was one of my biggest challenges. I think stepping into my own power, instead of I was overachiever, always looking for that validation. And I no longer look for it. I just show up. I just write my blog posts. I do my mini videos or whatever, do my interviews. And I get random messages from former family members saying how inspiring and apologizing for being critical 23 years ago. And it's like, oh, now that I no longer look for that validation, all of a sudden that stuff is happening on its own.
And how does that feel, like to get a 24-year-old apology?
I was really taken aback by it because I wasn't expecting it, and I was like, wow, That's pretty impressive. You can finally see my side of the things. But no, it felt really good because it really just showed me that no matter what struggle I've had, I've always been true to myself, even if I couldn't see it. And especially if other people couldn't see it. And to just kind of get that you've always been who you were supposed to be, loved it.
Yeah. And that's big work. Like, that right there is big work that everybody's journeyed to and through, right? Like, if it doesn't matter who it is, if you looked at them, you're like, you're who you're meant to be. Like, that's what your job is. That's why we're here. That's what your purpose is just to keep being that person and shedding those beliefs or restrictions that have been applied, that conditioning that's been handed down to you from other people who don't necessarily give it to you intentionally, you know? I don't think that a parent would purposely give their kid, like, here, take all this shitty self-belief and carry it with you for the rest of your life, you know? Those people are doing the best that they can.
Well, and that's, I think, I've always met family with compassion. Well, not always. I was very angry in my teenage years. Let's be real about that. But when I was able to meet my parents with more compassion, my foster parents with more compassion, and just know that in every moment they did the best that they could do, it just changed things slowly for me, doing the best I can in every moment that I'm in. I can't do more or less than that.
Yeah. You just be, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. So today it was funny because every time before a show I pull tarot cards or oracle cards, but this time it was tarot cards. And one of the cards that I pulled, I busted out laughing because I was like, oh yeah, that's because Peach was my guest today. And the card that I pulled was Page of Fire, and it talks about like outgoing, creative, confident, and mischievous, you know, and to use your own, use your originality and ingenuity, and to like really believe in yourself. And I seriously like busted out laughing about it.
You know, I'm kind of in tears laughing myself because I don't know if anybody Hellstorm's name, but Hellstorm's one of my favorite bands. She has this song, I Am the Fire. I played that this morning, cracking up my day.
Awesome.
So, synchronicity.
Yeah, it absolutely. And the second card that I pulled for today that might not exactly be for you, Petra, but for any of our listeners, when I was like, what do people need to hear right now? It talks about this need for a balance. So look at your life and look at where do you need some balance? Are you always planning and never acting? You know, where you're never taking action, you're never stepping out and actually applying that plan. Are you always looking for perfection? Maybe it's time to play with the imperfect side of things, because I think it's a riot, man, to be able to be imperfect. Mm-hmm. Very freeing. It's better than taking your broth at the end of the day. Seriously. And then if you look at the other side of that is, if you never plan, if you're always in this place of just spontaneity and moving on, maybe there's a way to look at your life and be like, if I had a system here in place, is there a system that I could have that would allow me to refine a little bit more, that would give me even more time to play? What would that look like? So that's my challenge for anyone listening, is looking at where you may or may not need any balance in your life. And then I will follow it up with like, I actually don't believe in balance. I believe in counterbalance. So it's always like little shifts in each direction, all the time counterbalancing, because like when the balance just seems to me like something that's never moving. You find it and you try to stand there, and that shit's not fun. So with you, Petra, with where you're at, with what you're going on, what you got going on, and I know that might shift and change by tomorrow even, you know.
Yep.
What do you want to share with our listeners today? How can they get in touch with you? How can they find you? How can they experience more Petra? What would that look like? Where do they go?
So I have a website. They can find me at petramonaco.com. I have a Facebook page that's relatively active where I share a lot of my videos and musings throughout the day. Facebook.com/petramonaco. If they happen to be in Facebook groups, they can find me. I have a group, but it's not up and running because it's for a project. And of course, I'm in the Rebel Hearted group with you.
Yeah, you are. And we all know that's a party.
Yeah, especially when people start showing up. So I'm definitely online. People can Google me, and I'll probably be the first thing that pops up.
Yeah, with a great big grin, because that's what I always think whenever I see any of your pictures, that they're like fun and all of that. So do you have a project that's upcoming that you want to talk about that's specific, or a book? Like, do you want to talk about Dream, Believe, Take Action and where they can find it on Amazon, or is there something else? Because I know I asked you before the show, but I want to give you an opportunity to change your mind because, why not?
So my book is obviously available on Amazon, paperback or Kindle. Dream, Believe, Take Action. And I am releasing a course on Monday for any person that might think there's an introvert and wants to maybe have a dream in a business, to help them have self-confidence to take action. But that will release on Monday. There's a blog post going out about it this afternoon.
I love it. Awesome. This has been a blast, Petra. Thank you so much for being my guest today. I hope that you'll come back in the future.
I will. Yeah.
All right. Well, to all of you listeners, if you want to connect with Petra, please do that. petramonaco.com. Go there for real. Or if you're in any of the entrepreneur groups on Facebook, I'm sure you'll see her. She is a frequent poster and is all over the place with really insightful and inspiring and vulnerable posts. I just love them. And if you want to connect with me more because, hey, you want to know about how to get traction through imperfect action, head on over to rebelhearted.com. I'd love to have you join me there. And until next week, I wish you a day as absolutely beautiful as you. So much love. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us on the Rebel Hearted Radio Show. Is your wild child still left wanting more? Contact Lisa further at rebelhearted.com and step into your rebel-hearted self.